After the First World War, a group of pacifists met in the Netherlands to discuss how to prevent war in the future. One of the pacifists present there, the Swiss engineer Pierre Sarasota, proposed to bring together a group of volunteers coming from different countries, including the countries that had been in war, to reconstruct an almost completely destroyed village in the north of France. Pierre initiated the first project in the small village near Verdun, which had been heavily bombed during the war. After the first experiment, the idea was born, and Pierre did not give up. He initiated more projects in these first years, mainly as a response to natural disasters. He also got in touch with other pacifists to enlarge his knowledge on peace building and non-violent strategies to resolve conflict. One of the people that whom he exchanged letters and opinions was Gandhi. Promoting a culture of peace through intercultural dialogue and mutual respect, through building strong bonds and real friendship, through sharing realities and showing solidarity, and by working together side by side. This has been the goal of more than 100 years. Organizations have set up networks through which they exchange volunteers and work on common projects. These networks can be regional networks such as Alliance for European Voluntary Service Organizations, or NVDA, the Network for Voluntary Development in Asia, or NAVO, the Platform for African Voluntary Service Organizations. Some networks share a common history or ideological background, such as Service Civil International, the organization founded by Pierre Sarasota, the ICYE Federation, or IBO. While each network has its own specificities, they all feel part of the same international voluntary service movement and share the same values and goals.
Soil is where 95% of all our food comes from. Living and biodiverse soil means healthy food and healthy people. Living soils and the millions of microflora and microscopic organisms that form them are not only the foundation of vital and life-sustaining food, but they are also the main source of fuel, fiber, and medicinal products. Healthy soil is essential for all life to thrive. Soil erosion, soil desertification, soil contamination, soil salinization, and many other factors are threatening soil around the world. In recent human history, the quality and care of soil have been largely ignored and misunderstood, and due to mismanagement, short-sightedness, and extractive land practices, soils are under serious threat. The time to restore our earth is now. The time has come to recognize and remember our dependence on living soil and the soil microbiome. For what is essential to life is often invisible to the human eye, and the only recognized and valid in the moment of death. We must protect and regenerate it immediately in order for life to continue, not just the humankind, but all life on Earth. The time to act is now. A group of young soil ambassadors drafted the first draft of the Soil4Life manifesto in October 17, 2019, during an international soil protection and management training led by CCIVS. Within the framework of that soil project, coordinated by Legambianti Onlos, co-financed by the European Commission through the LIFE program. The Soil4Life manifesto is a call to action that was further developed during a 2-year participatory process addressed to global leaders and decision makers to support the transition to a life-sustaining, healthy and thriving environment, of which the ground we walk on is the foundation. The Soil4Life manifesto therefore calls for a soil commons legally based rights for soil and ethical responsibilities, immediate protection and conservation of living soils, updated monitoring of soil, its living organisms and relationships across biologically diverse systems, recognition, reward, and granted income for small and medium-scale farmers, including indigenous people and peasants. Support for farmers while transitioning to regenerative, organic, chemical-free, natural, and sustainable methods. Then to damaging subsidies, recognition, valuing, and protection of traditional wisdom and sustainable land-based cultures. urgent urban adaptation, regeneration and damage limitation, support for research and education, soil and the sustainable development goals. Living soil is essential for all life to thrive. With this manifesto, we provide a tool for advocacy, a call to positive action and good practice on our living earth. We recognize and acknowledge the work of people actively engaged in restoring balance and justice, who work the land and together regenerate soil and ecosystems, as well as those who volunteer for the essential cause. We have the right to live, but with this right comes the responsibility to protect and care of all that gives us life. Can there be any greater reason than our very own lives depending on it? Let's join our forces and support the Soil4Life Manifesto.
I'd like to start today by saying greetings and a warm handshake to all of the people who are a part of this panel today. And my name is Christina Ella, and I would like to tell you a story. Well, I'll start by qualifying that it's my belief that Indigenous peoples of all nations come to this world knowing that we are of the earth, we are a part of it. As children, my sister and I played with the earth every day in the summer, creating big mud puddles with water and then making a small house, dishes, cups, even mud people. We spent all day outside catching pollywogs from the pond, grasshoppers who spit their chewing tobacco on our hands and arms, making whistles out of leaves from the trees, swinging from the branches of willows. We even spent most wintry, snowy days outside building forts and snow people, angels, tunneling under and through it. We always felt so proud of our creations. We so enjoyed these gifts of natural interactions with the earth and environment that were given to us freely. Children of all nations have done these things for millennia. Now, fast forward about 20 years. I was living in East Los Angeles, and I took the bus to my job in the city every day. It was generally my habit to sort of hop off the bottom stair of the bus onto the sidewalk. One day, when my feet hit the pavement, a sudden bolt of energy went from my feet up to the top of my head, and I heard a voice say, "Oh, look, daughter, look what they've done to me. I'm suffocating. I can't breathe." And when I looked around, all I could see was a concrete jungle, tall buildings, paved streets, nary a patch of earth to be seen, and I felt her deep sadness. I tell you these stories to help you understand how my resolve to work for the earth came to be. I understand now that my most important reason for being here is to add my voice to the thousands who are working hard to save our Earth Mother and all of the gifts that she gave us to make life on this planet sustainable to this day. Our connections to the four sacred elements, though, have been broken, and it will be a difficult path to bring ourselves back into Wechosani or balance with this individualistic thinking that Western civilization has held us captive in. But since we've all broken our covenants with the universal laws, we must all nations of people, must come back together to find our way back to right relationship with the four elements: earth, wind, water, and fire. The question is this: where do we start? For me, the earth was the most logical place since I felt I had no control over the air, water, or fire. It begins with decolonizing our patterns of thinking, and then we work to decolonize the soil, the sacred land on which we walk. The soil, which is the covering of our Earth Mother's hidden beauty. We must start first with rebuilding the soil, ridding it of all of the poisonous toxins that have put into her, thinking she could be bent to the will of giant corporate farming concerns. They are of the thought, in my way of thinking, that they know more about how to get more production out of her than she herself does. A beautiful way to start this work is with an Inipi ceremony or sweat lodge, and many other Indigenous communities have their own version of the sweat lodge. When we re-enter, this is an act. The sweat lodge is an act of returning to the womb of the Earth Mother. When we re-enter, we crawl into the lodge to show our respect and humility to the Mother and all of her creations by crawling in on all fours, not looking anyone inside in the eye, showing that we are no more, no less than anything in creation. We go in to cleanse and purify ourselves through the water. Oh, great. Through the water being poured on red hot lava stones known as the grandfathers. When water is poured onto fire heated stones, the steam that arises we call the breath of grandfather, not to be feared, but welcomed. The steam rids our bodies of the toxins of hurt, pain, anger, jealousy, hate, and suffering inside the lodge. When we leave all of these things inside. Those negative aspects of ourselves will be dissipated and carried to the sky with the steam. When the steam returns as cleansing rain, it nourishes the Earth Mother. So just as we started by cleansing ourselves before touching the earth to assist in her healing, so we must begin with cleansing and purifying her from the deadly toxins and contaminants. These are negative aspects that have been put into her soil by those same farming corporations who continue to rape her with their giant machinery that tears at her heart. And just as we work hard to decolonize our minds through thoughts, actions, and prayers, we start with decolonizing the soil that gives us the very life we live through the plants, animals, and water she provides us. And similarly, everything we need to start her decolonization has also been provided by her. All of the Wamakashgan, or the little creepy crawlers of the earth, the earthworms, insects, birds, larger animals, think buffalo, the plant nations, the stone people, the water, and yes, even fire can help restore health to the degradation that she suffers. And then building up the soil begins. Green waste or leaves and other plant matter. Food waste helps to create compost. Biochar or brown coal, which holds the least carbon and high moisture content, perhaps finely covered by cardboard and wood chips, can help soil regain health. After a few weeks, after a few weeks or better, a month or more, after a few weeks or better, a month or more, the soil can be gently turned with any garden tools suited for the job and let the soil settle before planting can begin. I want to say now that I deeply applaud this workshop, Soil Land Guardians, that will be teaching our descendants prayerfully down to the 7th generation to protect the earth for their 7th generation. The youth of today are leading the way. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the Soil4Life conference. This conference was coordinated by CCIVS, the Coordinating Commission for International Voluntary Service, and is co-financed by the European Commission and their LIFE project, which aims to promote the sustainable use of soil as a strategic, unlimited, and non-renewable resource, and has partners in France, Italy, and Croatia. This project is coordinated by Legambiente, who are a member of CCIVS, and CCIVS's focus in this project has been on capacity building for young volunteers and developing and delivering the Soil4Life manifesto, as well as giving greater visibility to actions in the field of soil. Our theme today is Land Guardians, something that's very close to my heart. And it's been a pleasure and a privilege to do the research and collect stories to be able to bring this conference to you today. I've had the great pleasure to contact many different projects around the world. And I'd just like to acknowledge that there are many individuals, organizations, communities, and projects that are working on behalf of soil, working to promote good practice, working to demonstrate what is possible. And it was really difficult to decide and to choose who could be here today to share their story. So I just want to acknowledge and give thanks to those others that are not here today and that are not mentioned in this conference, that are taking action on behalf of soil and of life. And perhaps before we get started, I'd just like to invite everyone who's watching this today, wherever you are in the world, to just take a moment to put your feet on the ground, to take a deep breath, to straighten your spine, and just acknowledge the earth that we are all sitting on, wherever we are today, at whatever time. Just acknowledging that ground below our feet. And taking a moment to give thanks. Okay, so from that place of thanks and acknowledgements of this beautiful planet that we live on, I'd like to introduce our first speakers of the day. Today we're going to hear from 6 fantastic, inspirational, and dear people who are taking action on behalf of life. They're doing their part to preserve, conserve, restore, and regenerate the soil where they live, as well as participating in education, advocacy, and other actions that their impact may spread beyond the boundaries of the land where they live. And what I've learned really from the different conversations that we're going to hear today and the different presentations is that one cannot really discuss soil and the conservation of soil without touching on human life and the restoration and the reconciliations of humans and nature. And so it's really important to listen to and to share our stories and to come together to do this work, because we don't do this work alone. And there's no reason to do this work alone. So let's get started now with our first speaker. I'd like to introduce Karen de Vries and Ryan Botha. They are the founders of a project called La Loma Viva, which means the living hill, in Granada, Spain. They're facing some massive challenges in a very arid, desertifying Mediterranean climate, and they are putting into practice some strategies to bring their soil back to life and to show that it's possible.
My name's Karen. I come from South Africa. We moved to Spain in 2009 to see if it was possible to bring back life to a semi-arid farm on the coast of Granada. We called the project La Loma Viva, which means the living hill, as we really wanted to try and create the conditions to support life on the land here again. The project was started using permaculture, a design framework for whole systems thinking. This was used to set up the mainframe elements of the farm, including all renewable energy, rainwater harvesting, and sustainable building. Since 2009, we've been researching and implementing various agroecological strategies to find solutions for degraded Mediterranean landscapes. Our current focus is developing Syntropic Farming in a Mediterranean context, with the aim of facilitating ecosystem regeneration through agriculture. By observing nature, we came up with a slogan, and that is, think like a forest. Because when we consider any element in our environment, we can see that they all emerge from a complex system of wholeness. Everything is interconnected and is part of a dynamic pattern of relationships. One of the biggest threats to soil health in our area has been systematic deforestation. This is largely due to the fact that the Mediterranean has been settled and cultivated for thousands of years by many different civilizations. In fact, the Mediterranean regions are under immense threat and there is less and less availability of fertile soil for food production. Modern agriculture has used a lot of destructive farming practices, and there's been little consideration for soils or ecosystems. Other challenges to the soil here include the use of ploughing on a large scale, industrial monoculture, and now the challenges of climate change, especially irregular and unpredictable rainfall.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Botha and I'm the co-founder of the Loma Viva Foundation. Loma Viva is pioneering the syntropic farming practices of Ernst Gotsch in a semi-arid setting. Ernst Gotsch is a Swiss geneticist and farmer and the originator of syntropic farming. It is a type of agroforestry which is all about creating agro-ecosystems. Syntropic farming creates forest-like systems with multiple layers of trees and shrubs with perennial and annual plants. The aim is to establish highly productive agricultural systems which have the complexity and the resilience of natural ecosystems. Here you can see our first syntropic area that we planted in 2017. There was rapid growth in the first year as all the layers are planted at the same time. And in just 4 years we are already seeing a diverse agro-ecosystem emerging, driven by the dynamics of natural succession. We observed indigenous species of trees and plants in our local area, and we choose appropriate ones based on their functions in the ecosystem. We select both support species and productive ones that are adapted to the local environment and need very little inputs. Species are selected to occupy different strata according to their relative height in space and according to succession, meaning how much time they will spend in the system. Some key principles of syntropic farming are: it is process-based and not input-based. Rather than seeking to add inputs from outside sources, syntropic farming mimics and accelerates natural processes to accumulate carbon, water, and nutrients. The agro-ecosystem produces its own inputs, mainly in the form of organic matter, which provides for much of the nutrients and humidity that is required. Through this process, we can create resilience and diversity even on degraded lands. Syntropic farming utilizes heavy pruning to add biomass to the soil, to open up the canopy, and to reduce senescence and promote growth information in the system. Pruning also increases photosynthesis. More photosynthesis means a cooler environment. There is a saying in syntropic farming, agua se planta, meaning water is planted. This phrase was coined by Ernst Gotsch, and it talks about using plants to store water rather than relying on irrigation. And finally, turning our enemies into friends. This again talks about using plants to carry out specific functions. For example, in more arid conditions such as ours, farmers should look for plants that are green and photosynthesize all year round, even in severe drought. These so-called weeds can greatly support other less hardy productive crops. This includes many tree species, which if managed correctly can foster less robust species and produce a lot of organic matter quickly to cover and rebuild the soil.
Through our research here, we realized that there's one important practice which stands out the most for soil regeneration. And we came up with a little saying about it, and that is, organic matter matters. Organic matter is really the key to soil health. It affects the physical, chemical, and biological properties of soil. And basically, that's what creates healthy soil. Soil carbon levels are also directly related to the amount of organic matter in the soil. So where does all this organic matter come from? As we've shown, syntropic farming uses densely stacked layers of plants and trees with the aim of achieving 100% soil cover with living plants all year round. These layers of plants also have multi-level root systems. This creates a condition where carbon is increased both above and below the ground. We then use a chop and drop strategy of pruning to return all organic matter back to the surface of the soil. These syntropic farming practices simulate and fast-track nature's strategy of creating a forest. We did a case study for the Food and Agriculture Organization for their manual Recarbonizing Global Soils, which was published in 2021. We took soil samples from our syntropic area as well as from our neighbour's land under conventional agricultural practices. Results showed that after just 3 years, in the Syntropic area, there was a significant increase in soil organic matter and soil carbon. It also improved the physical conditions of the soil, with a noticeable change in both the color and structure. So why is organic matter the #1 factor for improving soil health? It reduces soil temperature, evaporation, and compaction. It benefits the nutrient cycle of the soil. It increases water infiltration. It increases soil biodiversity as well, which creates habitat for all those wonderful microorganisms and their beneficial actions. So in the end, we just let plants and nature do the work of healing that they've been doing for billions of years. And like any other animal in the system, we simply help to plant and manage the forest.
The Mediterranean systems globally are under severe threat of desertification due to climate change. Rainfall is becoming less each year, along with unpredictable weather conditions. For example, at the moment we are in a drought and have had only 20 liters of rain in the past 10 months. If it does rain, there is a huge downpour resulting in flooding and damage to property. Also, there's an increase in the strength of winds, which is leading to the increase of soil erosion and drying out of the landscape, and high evaporation rates, and also increase in wildfires in the surrounding ecology. And the fauna of the area are under increasing pressure of decreasing food and water resources.
We believe that the Soil Manifesto is an important and timely initiative which sets out the main guidelines for conserving and protecting our Earth's soils. There are many ways the manifesto can support our cause. To support farms transitioning to more sustainable practices, with recognition and reward for Indigenous and regenerative farmers who are helping to preserve the soils and the ecosystems of our beautiful planet. We also need support for small-scale farmers who play a hugely important role in the global food production. Finally, we need to stop deforestation and promote the planting of nutrient-rich and perennial plants, especially through agroforestry systems.
My wish for the people, the area and the earth is for us all to come into collaboration and harmony with each other, to share our collective knowledge and to learn together, to look at the planet through a new lens of eco-literacy and to work together to create whole systems and to revitalize the soil, forests and water cycle, which will bring back stable conditions on all levels, all the living organisms on the planet.
When we think about the future of the Earth, it's becoming apparent that in order for us to survive and overcome the immense challenges we currently face, it's imperative for us to align with nature. If we can move beyond the narrative of separation and understand that we are all part of an interconnected system of life, if we can really start to think like a forest and embrace the diversity and the multiple perspectives and relationships that each life form brings to the whole. If, as humans, we can recognize our function in the ecosystem and our interdependence with all of life, we can be a positive force for change.
So now we have the privilege and joy to take a 10-minute farm tour with an inspiring and energetic man, Omar Hajji. He's the founder of Marrakesh Organics in Morocco, and Omar works actively in the field of education and cultural restoration. And I'm very excited to share with you a brief and exciting and educational tour of his farm. Enjoy.
Hello guys, my name is Omar and I'll be taking you on a 10-minute farm tour of our farm in Marrakesh called Marrakesh Organics. Okay, so we're gonna start with the first stop here in what is called in permaculture the food forest. So permaculture is a type of agriculture that's based on a design science. So everything is about putting the components, the elements of a farm in their right places through a design process. And it's a type of agriculture that's beyond organic. So you're not just not using pesticides and chemicals. This is like ecosystemic. You're trying to copy how a natural forest or nature works in general. What we see here can also be called agroecology or agroforestry in this case, because we're growing cash crops, in this case medicinal plants and aromatic plants like lemon verbena, which you see here. So lemon verbena is great. You could distill it as an essential oil that sells for a good price, or dry the leaves and sell them as a herbal tea. So we're using, as I said, agroforestry or agroecology. It's using cash crops in between fruit trees. So you have two products at the end of it. The cash crop will help pay for the bills until the fruit trees get established, because we all know fruit trees take 3 to 5 years before they start really giving a good production. So it makes good business sense to do so. Here we're growing a lot of vegetables as well. So in this case these are courgettes or zucchini. In between we find a lane of citrus tree. We're growing corn here as well. As you can see, we're growing peppers, 3 varieties of peppers. There are tomatoes. Here we see onions. And next to them, radishes, 2 types of radishes. And here we see a lane of apricots that was very productive this season. And here, aubergines plus melons. So you could see that the melons are actually just coming up. And I'll just walk you through here just to see the land. As I said, we're on 7 hectares of land. It's a big fig tree. This tree actually was here like 7 years ago. So that's a tree that was already here, but all the rest are pretty much 3 years old. So apricots, corn, we're growing 10 varieties of vegetables just in this small space. And here's an open space that we use for barley. So unfortunately it was a drought year, and we had like 5 long months without a drop of rain, so that created the crop failure in cereals. So but still you could see, because we've been working the land, it still gave a little bit of biomass, which our sheep got to graze on. So that's still better than nothing. Okay, let me take you to our main fertility station. This is where we make a particular type of fertilizer called compost tea. The challenge with organic or being organic is you can't use all the easy to find chemical fertilizers and phosphorus and potassium and such things. So you have to compensate for them already by using really good quality compost, which we will visit our composting facility in a short while. But we use this apparatus called the compost tea. So compost is humus. It's decomposed organic matter that becomes like black soil or like forest soil, which has a lot of microbes, so a lot of microorganisms. They're very important for us to feed our plants. And here we would, this is like a 1,000-liter container. We would put 8 kilos of compost and add some sugars and rock dust, which are minerals, and then we will aerate it. So this is a air pump, quite a strong one, that will give air for 24 hours. And at the end of the process, you have a very rich, highly mineralized liquid fertilizer that will that's also rich in microbiology, that will get to go through drip irrigation, just like this. There's a filter here, and then it will go to all the crops. So not just the vegetables, but also the trees. So here we see our olive production. This is, we have 600 trees. So a lot of them are about 15 years old. And they all have a ground cover. Actually, half of them have a live-in ground cover, which is lucerne or alfalfa, and the other half, like here, this is just like a dead mulch. And what I mean by mulch is just like dead leaves and grass clippings. So all that biomass goes under them to help us save on water. So we also mimic the forest. The forest is never empty soil. It's always covered by biomass and leaves and such things. Here we have, we had a decent crop of barley. Again, most people did not have their plants even go to seed, but here we see that we have a lot of biomass. So this was good because this soil actually has been worked. There's a lot of organic matter here. This is one of the first soils we started with 5 years ago. So even in a drought year, you could have a production. That's what's amazing about this. Part of the work we do is also adapt, species of cereals and vegetables and legumes to be drought tolerant. So we already have a drought tolerant alfalfa, barley. We have an ancient type of wheat that's also drought tolerant, fava bean, and almost about 20 different seeds that we have been developing or adapting in the past 6 years. So here we're also gonna pass by some ecotourism structures. These we built in 2017. Our work is very holistic, so we don't just do agriculture. We are very interested in water management, in alternative energies, and also in alternative or traditional housing. So this is made with adobe. These are bioclimatic structures. That means the walls are wide enough to support, to have a good heat exchange during the very hot summer months. So no need for air conditioning. That's really the goal, is to use local resources, not require any extra energy. I'll show you some adobe bricks, which by the way is an Arabic word, atob. So right here, that's what they look like. Next up, we have our, usually it's a greenhouse, but by March we uncover it, so there's a lot of tomatoes. And here we've just sprayed them actually 2 days ago with sulfur. That's allowed in organic agriculture, is to help them with the heat. So right now we're just starting to have very strong heats, so the sulfur really helps. And we have here just tomatoes, and on the sides we have cucumbers, we have basil, and we have some pumpkins. And the last station is the composting. So this is what a compost look like. This is where we make compost. It's a way for us to recycle all our vegetable wastes and manure and all that stuff. Okay guys, time is up. I hope you enjoyed it, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you, Omar. Oh, I'm almost out of breath running through the farm with you, sitting here at my desk. So I invite everyone to take a deep breath and come back to the present moment. And our next speaker, who I'd like to introduce, is someone who's very dear to me personally. She's not only a friend, but a mentor and inspiring teacher of mine. Or Sunisa Jamwiset Deiters is the founder of Gaia Ashram, where she lives in Thailand, in northern Thailand. She's also one of the people that founded NextGen, which is the youth movement of the Global Eco-Village Network in Asia and Oceania, and facilitates courses on deep ecology and participatory education methods, as well as trainings for activists, nature connection practices, eco-village design, and sustainable life practices. Let's hear from
My name is Sunisa Jamwiset Deiters. I am from Thailand. I am co-founder of Gaia Ashram project, which is the project based in the northeast of Thailand, and we started this project in 2013. Gaia Ashram is a project where we try to approach holistically, which means that we're looking at how can we creating change in terms of the ecological aspect, and also how change can be made through the cultural aspect, social aspect, and also economic aspect, how those aspects or those areas affect or having an impact on the ecology, on soil, for example. So at Gaia Ashram, in the ecological aspect, we trying to grow our own food based on using the practice that is help to rebuild soil, and such as what is being practiced in like organic farming or permaculture or agroforestry. And in terms of culture, at Gaia Ashram, we're trying to create a culture where we constantly contemplate on our connections with the land, with the earth, with nature, to keep ourselves reminded that how our life depends on nature. And in terms of economy, so we're trying to find a business model that is able to earn a living, but also in the same process of earning a living, is also help to regenerate biodiversity or generate soil, which is the business we are doing now. It's called Gaia Essence. So this business, we're aiming to sell our products made from the crops that come from a more regenerative farming practice. So we want to trying to find a solution that can be inspired to the inspiring and also practical and doable for local farmer, where they can see like, okay, we can still earn a living and then have all our needs met, while we can also regenerate and bringing back our connections with the land. On our project, we have lands about 6 to 7 hectares, and in this area we have designed the area where we just want to preserve and protect it to be untouched, which is the area that we want them to regrow, rewilding area. So that it's coming from our analysis that with this much people that we don't only have a few people, like 6-7 people, and some volunteers and interns sometimes to help to work. So then we come to the conclusion that some area doesn't need much of our input. It is already wild and it can regenerate itself. So that area we made it as like a wild area where we don't go there, we don't go to use or to take anything from there so much. And other areas where we need to use it for our living, such as like we need to grow our food, we need to build our house, and then we would do it in the way that to cause minimal harm and impact on the land, at the same time to regenerate it, like what I mentioned earlier, that be careful in whatever we want to do on the land, and then rethink of how impact it's gonna cause on the land, the short term and the long term, and also using the farming practice that is more regenerative. And we have been doing this since 2013. A lot of our farmers, the local farmers in our regions, it's like in many parts of Thailand, are indebted, and they are under the pressures trying to get the most out of the land and do whatever they have to do to get the most out of the land, that including using heavy machines, using chemicals, and cultivating the same crop many times in the year. So that is affecting, of course, the degradation of the land, and at the same time also it brings these disconnections. It leads to the disconnections and the loss of the culture that we believe in the spirit of the land or in the spirit of nature, where we, with that strong belief in the past, we used to treat the land with a lot of respect. Even to walk on the rice or on the land, or using heavy machine on the land, we do it with a lot of awareness and humbleness, and we usually would ask the land first. For example, if we want to build a house somewhere, that means we want to dig in the holes and then put the pillars in. We would traditionally ask if we could do that. We ask the motherland, or we call in the mother earth, like, can we do this, and may we do this? But also the idea and the concept of the land is just a place where we can gain the most out of it. Is also a strong concept and being more and more accepted then. So that is how, that is the challenge that we have in our regions, and regarding the loss of the cultures relating to the pressures of the economies on the local farmers. The Soil Manifesto make us feel very empowered and make us feel very acknowledged in what we are doing, and make us feel powerful in terms of, we know that we are connected with others, people those people who aware and who care. And I wish that this manifesto could be promoted more and more, and should become like global campaign that is acknowledged widely. I don't think like the majority of people are really even aware how serious this is, the soil degradations and the soil regenerations. So not even mentioning like how to regenerate the soil, which should be the basic knowledge, which should be something to be taught in school, and which is something to be discussed in the policy, among the policy makers, which is something to be discussed among even like scientists or those who have technical knowledge of how can we do that in a way that is like very effective. So I think this issue is concern everybody, and I think my message would be for those who have the power and who feel responsible or who feel called, because you have the deep realization about this, to raise the awareness about how important this issue is for us as a living beings on this earth, to be able to continue to survive, continue to thrive on this earth. I think like if we believe in life, we have to think seriously about soil, about how degraded it has been, and how to regenerate it.
Amazing to see the different climates, from a dry Mediterranean, super arid North Morocco to this thriving, vibrant, wet, dry tropical landscape of Thailand, and yet facing similar threats to soil. So a few weeks ago, I had the privilege to get these busy people into one virtual room, and we had a fascinating and inspiring conversation around soil and what it means to be a land guardian. We spoke about the Soil4Life manifesto and why it's important to advocate for soil. And what came of our conversation that was really noticeable to me was the end feeling of how important it is for those of us active in this field to get together and to talk. And thanks to this incredible technology that is putting the world virtually at our fingertips, we were able to get together and share and connect. And despite the distance, we were really able to inspire each other. And I think that was one of the most beneficial things from our conversation. So I hope you will enjoy it and that all our viewers will feel inspired and uplifted after the discussion points.
So, as I said earlier, I'm very pleased to have these three people in a room together to talk about soil. I feel very passionate about soil, and yeah, I'm looking forward to see what we come up with today. So just very briefly, would you like to introduce yourselves so you can tell a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing? Maybe Karen, would you like to begin?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen de Vries. I'm coming to you from southern Spain on the coast of Granada from a project called Loma Viva, which means the living hill. It was called Loma, the hill, and we added the Viva. It was a pretty degraded farmland when we arrived, heavily plowed, very, very dry. The first time we walked around the land, I actually started crying because it was so degraded. But yeah, over the last 12 years, we've been researching different techniques of regenerating the soil. And since 2017, we've been working with a practice called Syntropic Farming, which is a type of agroforestry. And it really seems to be the way forward. We've noticed a huge change on the land. And yeah, especially now, this year we're having an extreme drought here in Spain, and most of our productive trees don't get any irrigation. And even though we've only had like 20 liters of rain since May last year, all of our trees are hanging in there with all the support species and everything. So yeah, we're really happy that we've discovered this method, and yeah, hopefully it's a way to guarantee production and health and everything into the future. So yeah.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so looking forward to hear more about the challenges and the successes.
Yeah.
Our changing climate. Yeah. So we pass to you need to unmute. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, my name is OmSunisa. I am the co-founder of Gaia Ashram. Yes, listening to what Karen shared, I think I will share a little bit of the similar line of introduction. We started Gaia Ashram project when we visit the land where I used to live in my village, and we look over the land, and the land was so dry, and it was just rice field after the harvest. It's all brown, and then the soil was like bare, open, cracked, and even just to stand there for like 15 minutes to seeing the land, it is difficult, it is hard, it is hot, and then yes, that was the motivation to based on that land, to feel like it would be a great honor to work with the Mother Earth and supporting with her magic, regenerating life on the land. So we started the Gaia Ashram project, and using the permaculture and eco-village design principles as a guideline, as like a holistic approach towards regenerating diversity and regenerating life in the different aspects. So that's our project, the Gaia Ashram project. We have started for this is year 9 of the project, and now it's not anymore a rice field. It's a little communities and of the international students and travelers and volunteers come to help. And then we are the learning center on like permaculture, ecology, and eco-village design education. And that is yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I'm feeling very, very much great honor to be here, and aware that a lot of people out there have been working on this regard, and has been working for the soil regeneration, and they are not here today. So I'm really, really want to honor all of them that can be here today, and then honor their effort. And I will try my best to share with this circle whatever we have experienced, and that might be useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
And Omar, can I pass to you?
Yeah, so my name is Omar Hajji. I'm based in Marrakesh, Morocco. So this is the southern part of Morocco where it's super dry. We're looking at, precipitations of about 200 millimeters, which is very, very little. It's almost desert-like. So in 2014, I took over the management of my grandparents' olive farm, which is about 7 hectares after my grandfather passed away. And it was quite a challenge, because although it was a farm with 600 olive trees, it was not functioning. There was no irrigation system in place, and we started losing olive trees. Actually, we lost about 80 trees due to drought. And so after having traveled the world, learning about permaculture and different design systems, I decided to put it all to the test. And so it's been kind of a demonstration site ever since. We've done a lot of permaculture courses, agroecology, natural building. So we get interested into a lot of different fields related to human well-being and environmental well-being. And so we've done a lot of mistakes, but also we've had beautiful successes in regenerating the soil. We're very happy looking back now how the trees now are like 5 times bigger than they were, that there's a much bigger ecosystem and biodiversity, a lot of different new varieties of plants showing up, new birds. I mean, it's just quite wonderful to witness that evolution. And so, yeah, we with everything that's going around the world, communication has become prevalent. So we're learning from the success of a lot of people, but sometimes there's just so much information we cannot know what works for us and what doesn't. That's the use of a demonstration site, is that we put all these ideas to the test and share with the community what works best in our particular context. So that's kind of in a nutshell the work of Marrakesh Organics.
Thank you, all of you. And I suppose I should introduce myself too. My name is Kate. I'm currently based in South Africa, and I have a small nonprofit called Green Hearted. We work in community gardens as a way to connect people back to nature and place. And I'm also had the privilege to be part of the Soil4Life project. I coordinated the writing of the Soil4Life manifesto, and also I facilitated the soil conservation and management training that we ran at the beginning of the project. And I've had the privilege to follow our soil ambassadors from the training through and try to get youth motivated to make compost and cover crop and all sorts of simple strategies for soil. And it's been very interesting in that process, especially researching the manifesto. Sadly, I found that actually nothing that we were saying is that new. I found very old articles from before I was born of people who were scientists, farmers, organic movements, all sorts of activists who've been very concerned about the health of soil for a very long time. And so as you mentioned, there's a lot of people working in this field, and yet it seems that it's almost like a small group of us working on behalf of Earth. And so I want to pose the question to all of you, and whoever wants to speak first, please go ahead. I kind of want to say, like, what is soil for you? Because it's such a vast topic. What is soil? Yeah, what does soil mean for you?
I mean, if I may speak, for me, soil, it really means civilization. It's also the continuation of the human race. I remember the first thing when I walked into the land where that I manage now, I'm like, I don't want to leave this the same way I inherited to the next generation. This should never happen. It only takes about 30 years to go from super dry soil to amazingly fertile soil. And I'm gonna work hard to make that happen so that the next person who tends to this land will have a bundle of fertility to work upon that's gonna support so much abundance for them and for the community. So for me, it really is the continuation of the human race and civilization.
For me, it's a magical place. It's a space between earth and heaven. It is a space between the yin, which is the solid ground of the planet, and the yang, which is the space of the light, air, atmosphere. And in permaculture, you are talking about the edge that is full of diversity. And just imagining this is the edge between the yin and the yang. And that in there is like, you see like there's air in there, there's water in there, in the soil, there's life. So there's a lot of activities and a lot of diversity in there. That's how it should be. And it's also a place where things emerge, from the solid ground and then shooting up to the sky. And it's also whatever up on the sky will finally fall down to. So it is really a spatial, magical place, and it can be almost like it is where everything coming from and will go back to. So it is like a space in between earth and heaven, or space between yin and yang. So in terms of a heart or spiritual connection, this is for me it is a very, very sacred space. It is where everything I need come from. It is how I emerge, where I emerge from, and then also where I will go back to. So it is a sacred place basically for the soul. That's how I feel.
Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, soil it's really the ground of all being, As you say, it's on the one hand almost like the womb where all the seeds and different forms of life are able to manifest. It's one of the 5 elements: earth, soil. So without, what's that saying? Something like, all life depends on the fact that there's a few centimeters of topsoil and it rains. That's what the basis of life. And yeah, I think more and more we're seeing parallels between the soil and also the digestive system. So it's the place where all nourishment, all food, the nourishment and the things that we need for life all come from the soil. And the parallels between
the microorganisms that are responsible for all that life happening in the soil, and the microorganisms in our own digestive system, there's becoming more and more of a parallel between those two different systems, and that it's alive, you know, and it's filled with all sorts of beings that we're just starting to learn about. And yeah, I really look forward to seeing what the magical world of soil shows us in the next few years, you know, I mean, it's just ridiculous that science is only really delving into the soil now, you know, and we're getting so much more information about what really lives in the soil. But yeah, it's exciting times to see what's happening below our feet, and yeah.
You've all made me remember my dear friend Larry Korn, who passed away 2 years ago, and how he studied soil science, and he said it was a very scientific understanding, and it was quite a new science at the time. I believe it was in the 60s, 70s, and he finally when he went to visit Matsunobu Fukuoka in Japan at this amazing, incredible, wild, untended rice field and orange grove. He said there for the first time he took a handful of soil, and he was never able to look at soil again after that. It completely became this living, thriving, he suddenly understood it, and that the smell of it was life and death and life and death, and it suddenly became this living thing, that tiny little handful in his hand. Well, despite having studied it, he'd never had that embodied experience of what soil was. And for me, that's always captured that moment when you realize that soil is alive and that you're working with life when you work with soil. For me, has changed the whole way I garden, the way I walk, the way I build my house, everything, what materials I choose to work with. And so at the heart of it, and also the heart of the manifesto for me, is this, like, soil is actually alive, and it's a complex living web, you know, and and everything that you've all said, and in anything that's alive, it requires this care and this treatment. But also there's such hope in that when you know that it's alive, and you work, I think all of us in this room are working with life towards regenerating life. It's actually quite a simple strategy. You just have to flow along with what life wants to do, which is keep living. So perhaps on that note, I'd love to ask or pose the question, why soil guardianship? Like, why do we feel we need to, and how are we doing that, and what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, like you say, Kate, you know, just understanding that soil is alive, and actually the steps to conserving it and looking after it and protecting it and regenerating it, it's not that hard. You know, like Bill Mollison said, sometimes the solutions are embarrassingly simple, but it's just, I think, raising awareness about what we need to do and how we should go about interacting with the soil and treating it. And I think even in a very small way, you know, all of us through our work, I mean, we feel ourselves very humble about the reach that we have with our work. But I think, I mean, for us, definitely, if we can have a function, you know, on this planet and a purpose, I'd rather spend my time working with nature, with the soil, and doing good work, and just putting our heart and soul into looking after these things. To me, that's the biggest reward we could have with a human life, you know, and just being of service to our planet. And
for me, it's why soil guardians? I think because I see the magic of it, and then I see how sacred it is, how I feel it's just so sacred, and how well, I think when I feel something so sacred, what I want to do is I wanna offer my service. I wanna surrender myself to it, to like trying to keep that going. You know, this is like when you love something so much, or like for example, how to find a yeah, it's just sometimes when you see something so beautiful, and is it too beautiful to own it? It's too beautiful. I feel like it's too great than my little self possession. So I can't own this land. I can only be there for it, you know. I mean, it's too great to own. I would feel sinful to trying to own something so sacred. So although when I came to Gaia Ashram land at that point, and then saw it so degraded and so how to say, like, you know, lack of life or beauty, lack of that what we were talking about, what how soil should be, and it feels so sad, but at the same time I feel so much trust in the magic of nature. Like the mother earth has her way. She has her way of how she built all this soil, you know, how she built everything, how she built a forest, or how she built everything that we see as ecosystem or as life on earth. There's a earth wisdom, and it just felt like all I have to do is to learn that wisdom, is to learn that magic. How does soil what we call soil ecology work? How does it work? And then how can I be part of that to help regenerating that? So in that sense of sadness, when seeing that degradation, there also excitement, knowing that I will be working side by side with the magic of the Mother Earth, and I'm going to be learning her magic. I'm going to be actually doing her magic. So it feels also very you know, I always say, like, to be in a very beautiful place is a privilege, but to be in a place where you have to regenerate beauty is a great honor. So so then I feel like, okay, this is what we're gonna be. We're gonna be on this degraded area, and we're gonna be working with we're gonna be learning the magic of the earth in how to regenerating life, and then we're gonna be working with her side by side. And so then the idea of working side by side, it is not that it is not even a guardian. I would say in a very humble way, as like how to say, a co-worker, a co-worker with the Mother Earth, with the microorganism, with all of that beings that also have their roles in regenerating the soil. I'm just one little part of it. So yeah. So why soil guardians? Because I think I wanna be part of that magic. I wanna be part of that. In that creating that sacred space on earth. Yes, and maybe I talk about it later and on, like how and what what we've been doing.
Thank you. It brings me to think about, Omar, what you said about connecting to future generations when spoke about ownership, and we can't really own it, like the land that comes from your grandfather but also passes on to future generations. It's also so important when we do this work. I'll pass to you, Omar. Soil guardianship. How does that?
Yeah, for me, like I don't remember exactly the first time I actually fell in love with the soil, but I know it happened. because like anytime I'm walking by and I find like a new development and they just throw in or dump in soil away into a river or something, that my heart really breaks, and I try to stop it or bring a truck and I take this soil and use it. It becomes an integral part of who you are. And I think it came with understanding, it came with knowledge. I think a lot of people don't have that sensitivity to actually understand what soil is, but once you do, you can never go back. Yeah, so for me, it's one of the highest, most honorable aspirations is to build this foundation of civilization, of abundance for our communities, for the next generations as well. It's something that's key, because taking care of soil is not only growing biodiversity or growing abundance, it's directly related to the water cycle. So if we don't build good soils, we're also greatly endangering ourselves. It's kind of the limiting factor that holds everything together, vegetation and water and the whole environmental cycle. So it is key. And I don't see anything more honorable than restoring and regenerating soils.
Thank you. So I guess then I want to get a little more grounded and say, and how are we doing that? How are you doing that? What, if it's so easy and so simple, why isn't everyone doing it? Like, what can we do? And thank you for making that connection to water, because I've worked with quite a few teachers that then say, no, you don't catch water, you plant water. And that's been a huge discovery for me working with soil, that you cannot separate soil out from water, from air, from plants, from photosynthesis, from all of those aspects. So I know, Karen, you've been doing some amazing work with it, also FAO, to talk about carbon and organic matter. Maybe you'd like to share very briefly a little bit about your work in that sphere?
Sure, yeah. So we did a case study for FAO. It was published last year as part of a manual called Recarbonizing Global Soils. And we took some soil samples from our Syntropic Farming site and compared them with a neighboring site, which just uses, they call business as usual practices, which is, annual plowing and all that kind of thing. And we discovered that after just 3 years of having this agroforestry system, the soil had, it was mind-blowing, the amount of change that had happened in the soil. And I think it was about 4.7 tons of carbon per hectare more were being sequestered after just 3 years. And the whole color of the soil changed, the texture of the soil changed. And what really came to light during that study, sometimes you're doing things and when it comes to explaining how and what and why, you really realize what was the main thing. And we'll say it in our video as well, but what sums it up is organic matter matters. And it basically all boils down to organic matter. And like you're saying, Kate, just planting water, and just the more plants you have, the more habitat there is both above and below ground. There's more carbon above and below ground. The soil gets shaded, it gets protected from the crazy sun that we have here. And our teacher, Ernst Scott, who is the father of Syntropic Farming, he always says that people are scared of photosynthesis because they like to see one tree and then 12 meters away, there's another tree. But actually plants like us, they like to grow together. They like to have a community. They like to have friends. And Also, you know, the whole network underneath the soil, it needs plants and it needs roots in order for that whole network to function. So when we first started doing it and we were planting plants very close together, I thought, this looks crazy. But, you know, so it's making more and more sense as we're discovering the benefits of just really having lots of plants growing together and all supporting each other, and yeah, just having a community there on the land. And one thing I wanted to say, to add just about the guardian thing is, you know, when we came here 12, 13 years ago, coming from the city, we had this idea, oh, we're going to go and regenerate the land. And actually, you know, the more you work with nature and the more you work with the earth, she starts working on you as well. So while we thought we were the regenerating ones, actually she's been regenerating us as well. So there's this kind of mutual regeneration that's happened. You know, we're not the ones running the show, basically. And I think, you know, as we move, you know, everyone talks about the Anthropocene and it's all about the humans. And I think as we move into this understanding that we're part of a living organism, and even though at the moment we see ourselves as the most intelligent ones, when we can actually see that, yeah, we can communicate, we can work with, we can be part of the living world, and start to speak more in more mycelial terms, you know, of everything being connected and everything working together. And I think that's a huge part of us also working with the soil and working with nature and getting ourselves out of the Anthropocene, you know. So yeah, so although we thought we were working with the trauma of the soil was helping us heal our traumas as well. And I think in the last 12 years, just working with nature, what I've really learned is becoming much more independent in terms of how we think, like disconnected from the narrative of separation, and more and more feeling the sense of connection, like you were saying, as well, just being connected to the magic and feeling like, you know, we're working with that and trusting that, and yeah, just trusting more and more in Mother Earth and her capabilities. And so that's a huge healing of trauma that happens to humans when they start working with the soil. So yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Omar, can I pass to you? Can you give us a little bit of techniques and strategies on regeneration and what's worked for you in your dry climates?
Okay. For us, it was, I would say it's quite challenging because from my understanding, one of the biggest limiting factors for soil building is water. And so for us, we're not even getting the right precipitations. So when you're getting 200 millimeters, that's probably in just 2 or 3 events. You don't have that humidity for the fungi to do their decomposition, for for you to maintain that organic matter decomposition. So there's just not enough time. And after experimenting with different techniques, I mean, for us, the 2 biggest things that has helped us, I mean, thank God that we live near the Grand Atlas Mountains. So every once in a while, maybe once in 3 years, we do get to bring the acequia, which is like a waterway when the snow melts. And that has been very, very useful in establishing organic matter and a lot of support species and biodiversity. And really just playing with the rain patterns, you know, just waiting until the rain is coming to plant as many seeds as possible. We've done a lot of work with animals grazing. That has also been quite successful in bringing up the organic matter levels. And really just, as Karen said, planting as much as possible. Like once I also understood that every square meter should have, I mean, you get free water, free, CO2 and photosynthesis. Why not, utilize it on every square meter by planting as much as possible? Of course, you need water to first reestablish establish the vegetation. But once you do that, you kind of get into this cycle of nature that's constantly growing. So yeah, these are maybe for ancient farmers, it was intuitive, but for us, like it was like a big aha moment. It's like, whoa, that's and it's things, you know, that we've learned also from Syntropic Farming and the work of Ernst Gotch. We kind of took some things from permaculture, but we stay open. I think it's very important to just stay open to so many things without having to label it, without having to adhere to a certain ideology, and just being open to what works where you are. Yeah, so for us, yeah, I would say those things were quite important in us getting the results that we've been getting. In 5 years, the olive production went like 5-fold. So that's just one of the results in terms of productivity. Yeah, one of the mistakes maybe we did in the beginning was trying to do it on 7 hectares. And then slowly we learned that, okay, let's just do it on 2,000 square meters every year and do it well. And then eventually in about 10 years or so, we will have gone through the whole farm. So that's also been, very helpful.
That classic permaculture, small, slow solutions, hey?
Yes.
We all want to go definitely big. And actually, that's how nature works, creeping out of the forest, kind of coming back.
Totally.
Great. I'm going to pass to and then I think we're going to have to close, unfortunately, due to time. But yeah, how do you find?
Okay, I feel like I can listen to the two of them for like a very long time. I'm learning something new here. So yeah, I want to share that we at Gaia Ashram, we trying to look at it from a different aspect. So basically, how can we approach soil regenerations from a different angle? So there's one aspect is the ecological aspect, basically about all the different the knowledge and the technical knowledge and experience that we can gain to help us to regenerate soil. So we need to add more organic matters. And now I know that also like water is like, how can we have that, make sure that throughout the year that to have the processing of the materials. And so yeah, that is the ecological aspect. What we've been doing here is that we grow mulch materials and then keep the land with different layers. As we are in this climate, you know, in rainy season, we can add a lot of things, even though we don't add in, it will add itself. So we just leave those to grow a lot in rainy season, and then we prune some of the pioneering trees and legume trees during the rainy season, because they will keep growing back in one season. For example, we have 6 months of rain. So for example, Lupina, when we chop in the beginning of the rainy season, and then we can chop again too at the end of the rainy season. So basically harvesting the biomass, we prune them and shred them and then put it back on the ground. adding some like manure on, like, and we also using the agroforestry or food forest farming as one of our main area, because we're trying to we also the aim also biodiversity to increase biodiversity. So then also the food forest or agroforestry is also throughout the year. It can help to hold the moisture in the atmosphere, in the ground. So so that is one. And then on the land, we trying to dig hole and ditch for the water to sink. So we make what we call inside the chicken intestines, in chicken intestine or the trench that go in between our land and then like the soak pit. And so that also help to keep the moisture after the rainy season. And yeah, we grew a lot of bamboos, because especially some type of bamboos that is produce a lot of leaves. So now we have a lot of mulch materials on site. So even just to sweep the leaf from the path, we can make a lot of compost from that without like in the other area. So at the beginning, bamboo is growing fast, so we put that as one of the first trees, the first plants, and then they give a lot of mulch. So we grow a lot of mulch materials in the beginning. So it's like just about like adding more and more on the ground. So that is in terms of, and then we also learned a lot from the Thai farmers movement network about introducing more different type of microorganisms in the soil, or like how do you introduce or like indigenous microorganisms with different ways of preparing them. So that is quite fun, because it's really proof in their farming that it's helped to increase their crops. So then that we start doing that also, and trying to do it in a bigger scale, like not only on the gardens, but mixing it with our water system. So it can also, when we water in the food forest or in other area, we can also spray it over. So that is the ecological aspect, and we're still learning. And there's like this magic is like we can learn for the rest of our life. And then I'm always excited to learn anything new from anyone. And then other aspect is that the cultural aspect, or which is about how the meanings or the story of us connecting with the soil, what soil means to us, like what you just asked. That is like leading to a deeper questionings, and then deeper meaning of what this means to us. And then and in that questions, it's giving ourselves a story and a place, and as a guideline for our connection and relationship with the soil, which is coming out from that is like a tradition, a culture, which is we learn from like indigenous culture. For example, they have a culture of so much respect for the soil, because like they know what does it mean for life. And then with that awareness, deep awareness and connection and the gratitude, it comes out as like stories, culture, traditions, practice that they pass on to the generation, to the younger generation. So we want to preserve soil, not only because soil means a lot to us in terms of the ecological aspect, but also it means to our heart, our soul, our connection. We know how we connect with this earth through the soil. So at Gaia Ashram, we're trying to also regenerate that aspect as well, because learning from the local culture where we are based on, they used to have that quite strong connections with the soil like that. So they would have their culture, traditions or practice where they're offering or where they're doing a ritual to thank the land, thank the soil for it's part of their culture. But since the pressure of the economy, where there a lot of farmers are indebted, and then they have to go a bit more in a different approach towards soil. You know, they use before they're very gentle and very respectful when they have to engage with soil, but because of that pressure, so then they becoming more, what we can say, like more aggressive or more strong in their approach, because they have to make it work for themselves economically. So that also affecting then the cultural aspect, and then the connection in that regard. So then we also think then about the economy. How can we also asking question around the economy that lead us to having this kind of relationship with the soil? So what kind of economies that like would help us to regenerate soil, not like cause destruction? So at Gaia Essence, we're trying to start a small business exploring where we make products from our agroforestry farms, or like trying to promote the product from other agroforestry farms, because the way they're doing farming, producing their crops is like more regenerative. So we're trying to raise the awareness on like, let's support those farmers or those products that coming from. So we ourselves also make products from our farm and trying to raise awareness around this. So then it goes to the social aspect, which is about what you are doing, kids, like bringing people coming together who cares about this aspect, and awareness raising, and sharing knowledge and wisdom, and then coming together and talking about it. So yeah, that's what we are addressing at in our living here as in Gaia Ashram community. But all of this we are still learning and will continue to learn from everyone. So I'm happy to be here, and today I really learned something something new every day to learn. Yes.
Thank you all. So unfortunately, because of time, we're gonna have to finish our conversation here. But I believe every speaker here today, if anyone wants to follow your website, there's a link under your speaker bio, and you welcome anyone who's watching to click on that link, and there's contact information on your websites, and they can learn more about the amazing, inspiring work that you're all doing for soil. And I want to thank you all for that work, and thank you all for giving up your time to be here today. I know that's, for a farmer, to get them off the land costs a lot. So I really, really value your time.
But I feel like I could spend the whole day with you all just chatting.
Yeah.
We'll have to do this again.
yeah, just for fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you all so much.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you,
Very
Kate.
nice
Thank
meeting
you for
you.
bringing
Thank
us
you.
here together.
Our next speaker calls himself Q7. He is Craige Beckett from IYX Africa, Indigenous Youth Exchange, and he works in bringing education and offering remote assistance to the South African native communities of South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and Lesotho, building relationships with chiefs and trying to spread education and create connection, and also giving voice to the story of his people, the San.
My name is Q7 Beckett, Craige Q7 Beckett. I'm from South Africa, live in Durban but travel the rest of Southern Africa up and down. The organization I'm head of, and with a very beautiful board, David Oban, Shari Canal, Megan Mowers, they youth, and in this youth they're doing amazing things. We do remote assistance for indigenous communities that lives in areas like this where you don't find assistance getting to these youth and to these women. We at this moment are at the stepping point and the turning point of turning indigenous languages into food security, to save it. So the organization is trying its best to turn vital food security information into Kun, Kwe, Naro, Chwansi languages of the Southern African natives, to also protect its language and its culture within food security. At this moment, soil in our culture and in our beliefs and in our community is very important, and in that importance is also at risk. Our lands are being over foraged and over poached as well as overgrazed by beliefs and communities that does not belong to the Southern African natives' way of life, the Bushman way of life. So you find our foraging foods are eaten by cows. We have glass all over where we forage bare feet. So normal life has affected Bushman life and its soil. The Soil Manifesto can support our cause in one vital way by translating things like this manifesto into indigenous languages to give us a better understanding of what is happening, what are the mechanisms in our community that needs to change or needs to be developed. So this manifesto teaches my people to really look after what they have. The message I have for people is concerned about soil. I'll give you a small example. In the Omaheke region of Namibia, the Jamwiset lives. The Jamwiset's entire foraging and grazing land is now occupied by cows. So imagine for yourself, if the entire South African open lands like this is occupied by cows, the amount of carbon we're creating, the amount of hunger we're creating by minimizing foraging. Indigenous people and other cultures should have the right to have green safe zones. So the greatest message in that is we need to find more ways and alternative ways to protect our green safe zones other than policy. My wish for my people, Southern African natives, many clans, many, throughout Africa, is that the world should learn more about us, not through tourism. The world should know about us by our way of life. Who are we? What's our languages? Who is our community? Why is our surnames that way? Why did we name rivers that way? Why did we name sand and mountains this way? These things need to be remembered beyond storytelling, but by visitations. The greatest wish I really have for the world to learn more about the sun by going to the sun and not the middleman in between the sun.
I was able to have a fascinating conversation with Q a few days ago. We managed to call in and delve a little deeper into his concerns and give some context to his people's situation and the work that he is trying to do there. So, I just wanted to have a further conversation after the video that you shared, just to give a little more context to the situation of your people and the situation particularly in relationship to soil and what's happening to the land there and how that is affecting your people and how that's affecting your people historically.
Okay, right. First of all, I'm Q7 Beckett, son, youth developer, as well as a person that looks at himself as a revolutionist within the San community. And I love nature. It's a natural thing to me. We are natural beings. So as a San person, something like soil is very important to me. And its importance comes back, like you said, over a long period of neglect. And I recognize it as soil trauma. People look at trauma in a human being, but not really see. So we're looking at some people, deforestation. Deforestation to us came in as an effect that affected not only our life as San people, but our soil. These places were not chopped down, they were burnt down. It's the difference when you have deforestation by fire and deforestation by chopping. By fire, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of trees growing back. So the settlers and their community building, some due to war, some due to coming for labor in our continent, has had a very large impact on soil trauma in a San person's life and perspective of living. Our land as San people are overgrazed. We don't have the means of saying no to a cow. We don't know this behavior. We don't know the psychology of a farmer or a herdsman. We are hunter-gatherers. So you find that communicating even on a basis of let's get to understanding that your cows moved this place and that it stayed this, and we don't have that type of communication. And in that we have cows overfeeding our soil and destroying a large part of what we know as foraging foods, not vegetables or your normal world foods, traditional foods. And that diet out of our diet and out of our soil impacts us as great as taking water out. So you find that one plant serves as water, serves as washing powder, serves as tea, serves as medicine. The cow eats mostly that, as a cow on a plain would eat a dandelion. So these plants disappear and the soil becomes bare, showing less of what it could do for us, which makes us move on the part of soil where we as human beings are fit. When we have to move on, we need to cross lands where there's fences, where there's borders, hunting restrictions, foraging restrictions. Plants like Hajjii is even illegal for us as native people to harvest due to what corporate has done to the plant. So things like this starts hindering from a soil trauma perspective again onto a person. And this stops us from, becoming healthy people, producing healthy babies. We have plans to fight alcohol fetal syndrome, but we now can't harvest these plants due to too many of us in an area. In return, also, we start deforesting in that area. We start being a bad presence for water. We start being a bad presence for animal life and start over-hunting and start over-existing on a small piece of soil that does not even belong to our lineage, our tribal clans, our movement. This is totally being displaced onto a new soil. So this is where soil becomes an active thing in our life, where we cannot afford to even be uneducated in the ways of soil today. What we know of soil is it can be dated back to the Stone Age. But what is known right now about soil and the technologies of soil, especially in agroecology, permaculture, these things are not found in our community, which can change the life of a hungry person, a bored person, a drug addict, to a person in the bush just sitting still. These are the things and the tools he needs to be sustainable in life. And adding foraging and adding bushman skills and San skills and Nama skills of survival and also of living off from the land to food security then complements it. So here is where also our organization, West Africa, will be translating food security manuals, basic visual aids due to many of the languages that they really can't be written, and we're finding codexes only in other people's languages, but not in a Southern African native codex. So visual aids then becomes a thing of importance that will translate agroecology and permaculture into an indigenous language via visual sight, which we are used to talking as an indigenous people. So here is where soil in our lives can contribute back to us sustainably from us, and not from an outside hand and an external factor that really can't change the environment within a San village, because this person has to go home or that group has to be sent back due to lack of finance. But training these people on a trainer basis, where they learn like we are learning now over a Zoom, a talk, an interview, but for them, visual aids over Zoom could do exactly what we need in language. And here's where the San needs help. Here's where remote communities and off-grid communities need help. And it is a fact that technology has given us that, as well as organizations like yourself, to share that.
What I hear you saying is that it's almost as if your organization is involved in an adaptation process, and the way of life of the San people is no longer possible due to this degradation of the soil. And I mean, the root of that goes deep to colonization and to politics and war and the redivision and reassignment of land and displacement of people. And so what I hear is, in a way, you're having to move into a new story and create agroecological practices or things that are appropriate to climate, but which aren't actually the traditional way of life of your people. So it's a huge, huge task, challenge, moment ahead. And I know when I met you in person, you expressed also some grief around that the work you're doing is like for adaptation and survival, but is it actually appropriate to your culture? Because your people walk barefoot on the land and hunt and gather wild food. And you laughed at what I called a vegetable and said, for my people, this is not a vegetable. Yeah, we eat other foods. And I think it's something that is very important to talk about in today's conference, because so many of us assume that like settled agriculture or regenerative farming and all these practices are the only solution. But I really appreciate what you bring in even questioning that. Like sometimes the relationship with soil even more ancient was not to actually settle on it, but to let it heal as we move through the landscape. And I wanted to bring that forward because I think it's quick for us to jump to solutions like, oh, we should all just permaculture, and it's almost like a enforced solution again in the case of the hunter-gatherers.
Correct. I mean, for example, look at the Hadzabe. The Hadzabe is a Southern African native clan that lives in Tanzania. And their way of life would look very cool if you see them hunt in the morning. They cover in a large part of the country and wipe out any little animal for skin because of the fear of winter and hunger. But yet they control such a beautiful balance of the ecosystem with their hunting technique. Remove the Hadzabe and things like baboons and pests that would really eat other crops up really takes over. We are part and parcel of the biodiversity, while other human beings are still trying to learn to come back. Now, I think we are really the facilitators that should be teaching people on how we actually get this right. It is not a trick, it is not a way of life, it's not a study, it is being human. And I feel that soil removes our blockages. Soil removes our hatred, our dislikes. It gives us one common thing. We walk on it, we lay on it, we sleep on it, we hunt on it, we feed on it, we plant. So whether we eat different foods or not, we are now in an evolution where we need to know how to look better after each other. Here's a group of people, the Southern African natives, no one really has looked at, even in diet. We have the strongest immune system, come out of a pandemic. I just spent a few weeks in Namibia again. I just got home yesterday. And I can honestly tell you, the rate of illness hasn't dropped because of COVID, has dropped because food supply got less to them in the bush due to COVID. Now, due to that food supply becoming less and them showing more activation with me treating them with Ayurvedic treatments and herbal treatments than their actual chemical medicines. So there we have a very good example of what diet is doing.
And thank you so much for bringing that, the value of what traditional cultures have and your knowledge of medicines, and also the story and what you said about connecting back as a human. And that actually, for me, comes to the foundation of what this conference is about. We can talk about microbes, and we can talk about compost, and we can talk about technique, and all those things are important. But at the root of our disconnection is that we as humans have taken this hierarchical, overpowering stand on soil, where, as you said, humans, we're just part of this ecosystem. And that's something that we can really remember or relearn. And the wisdom is still in, I believe, in the stories and in the dances and in the language and in the culture of tribes and indigenous peoples around the world who are still behaving in that way and not wanting to overpower nature. So maybe there's a story I can invite you to share if you have one briefly. We don't have much time. But
first of all, we should stop workshopping each other in how to live and live.
Yes.
And find outside classrooms and not inside classrooms, no matter what. A very large part of our education was in a square. Now we think like squares.
Yes.
So it's best people start thinking, feel, and act, and stop trying to be workshopped to live or to be unafraid or something, or face your challenges, just face it. And it is in community reach. I mean, I would not be helping my community alone. I have a diverse group of people. And the lesson in that I give these group of people is that everything they thought was wrong, that they did wrong to our communities as indigenous people, actually happened first in their communities and spilled over from their communities to our communities. So we must stop looking at indigenous people as traumatized. Well, all this is coming actually from a more traumatical experience. I've always asked the question of how does a hunter-gatherer learn, or that person is born in the bushland. We learn by play. We learn the play of a gazelle. We learn the play of a jackal. We learn the play of everything, not the fear of anything. And in this playing, we learn life. People should stop taking life so serious. We're seeing illnesses that we only see in rock drawings and stories of our great-grandparents in living people. And that is because of taking life this serious. I just took a Zimbabwean lady and an English boy from Pretoria Centurion to the Kalahari. And what they thought was life fell to a useless research in their life. They lived, they ate with these people, they played with these people and learned faster than they could ever learn in a workshop in real society. Now, that is only because everything else they know was stripped away from them. Technology, their watches, their phones, their networks didn't make sense. And once all these things are stripped off, everything else is a classroom. Under a tree becomes a classroom. Looking under a rock becomes your project. These things are real life. And the more we study on how to live a real life, we actually miss life. And I think the greatest lessons they could learn from Bushmen and people living a bit feral is that we don't have the rules you have in learning. And that makes big difference. Because the rules the normal world has teaches them to obey and to fear. While our rules teaches us a king cobra can be picked up by the tail without you being bitten. You can eat elephant shit and live off them. You can live in a lion's den and he will not bite you. And this is the lessons we need to pass on. It's a one big classroom. It's not an indoor thing. It's not high fences. We have people with 2 high fences. How can I learn from my neighbor when he's got a high fence? It's the same things Bushmen face, people face here in normal urban society, and they think they're free. We just have bigger spaces with fences. They all got smaller spaces with fences. The big difference, it affects soil, it affects water, it affects food, it affects how you and your energy affects what I need to get from nature. So the greatest lesson is to go back to play, learn, and play, learn could save us all from taking a lot of life serious. It should not be that, it's a stress. And unfortunately, the soil gets it first before we.
Thank you, Q. I absolutely agree. And thank you so much for bringing that point, because I think the danger of the time that we're in is that we do become it feels so urgent with our climatic, political, social injustices that we're facing. It does feel so urgent that there is that danger to become very serious and very tense around these subjects and stories. And thank you for bringing in that element of playfulness and reminding us that that is the true classroom. And the areas that are alive are our greatest teachers, and protecting and conserving those areas is of utmost importance, but also going into them and learning from them and integrating and communicating again in the wild spaces. All the answers are there. I also truly believe that. And so thank you so much for bringing that in. And thank you for your inspiration and for the work that you're doing. And I'm really sorry we have to end the conversation here. It's unfortunately on these things, there's this time factor, another fence in our mind. But I look forward to speaking more and to collaborating further. And best of luck with all the endeavors. Is there any last word you want to say to close up? Okay.
Yeah, love more than yourself. Love the world.
Okay, Julia. Thank you, Julia. Thank you. Very important when we talk about soil and the guardianship of soil, that we acknowledge, revalue, and recognize the indigenous peoples or the original peoples or the first peoples of our lands, of this planet, and that many of them have been displaced and forced into situations that are not their original way of life and don't offer the same conditions, plants, fauna, flora, and soil quality that they were able to be part of in the past. Many of these voices have been silenced in the past and are still silenced today. And so it gives me great pleasure to welcome and to offer everybody the opportunity to hear from a land guardian who works in the field of Indigenous rights, Her name is Jachuka, or in Spanish, Jorgelina Duarte, and she is a delegate of the Continental Council of the Guarani Nation. But I think she can explain herself better, and it's best to hear from her.
Mi nombre es Jachuka en Mbga guaraní y mi nombre en español Jorgelina Duarte. Vivo en la comunidad de Tamanduá, en una comunidad Mbga, Tecoa Mbga, queda en la localidad de 25 de Mayo, Misiones, Argentina. El pueblo nación Mbga guaraní nos encontramos en la parte de Argentina, en la provincia de Misiones y también en Paraguay, Bolivia, Brasil, y también hay algunas familias encontrándose en la actualidad en Uruguay. O sea que somos una gran nación que no tenemos límite de estado como actualmente estamos divididos. Entonces nosotros nos encontramos continuamente, tenemos relaciones con los hermanos que están en otro país actualmente. Y bueno, como nosotros vemos lo que es el cuidado del suelo, no es algo separado, o sea, no se puede separar el suelo solamente, nosotros vemos como un todo. Por eso es que nosotros hablamos de Ibirupá, que significa donde se asienta la tierra. O sea, no es solo la tierra en sí, lo que vemos en la superficie, sino que es donde se asienta y donde descansa la tierra. Entonces, para lograr ese equilibrio, también hay que cuidar Ka'agwirupá, como es el monte. Ka'agwi quiere decir monte y también quiere decir Upá, donde se descansa, donde se sostiene, para que haya todos los árboles, el monte, toda la biodiversidad que en ella hay. Y también se habla de Irupá también, cuando hablamos del agua, que también tiene que ver con el suelo. Entonces nosotros vemos como la madre tierra, que es lo que alimenta todo, es todo integral, no vemos cosas separadas, los elementos separados, sino que todos son fundamentales. Antiguamente, o por lo menos hace muchos años, cuando no estaba la presencia del hombre occidental en este territorio que estamos actualmente las comunidades y que siempre estuvimos, lo que hacían tradicionalmente los Mbga para el cuidado del monte, el suelo, conservar lo que es la fertilidad de la tierra, era que se trasladaba de un lugar a otro, pero no porque éramos pueblos nómades, como nos describen los antropólogos y los historiadores, sino porque era eso, la lógica era que se dejaba descansar un tiempo el suelo de la presencia humana. Entonces nos íbamos, o por lo menos nuestros antepasados se iban de un lugar a otro. Luego de años volvían a su lugar y volvían a ocupar ese territorio, porque todo era territorio indígena, pero hoy en día en la actualidad ya no se puede seguir haciendo lo mismo, entonces tenemos que ya buscar otra forma de cuidar la madre tierra o el suelo, el monte, el agua y todo lo que ella hay. Ubumana'n quiere decir en Mbga, Ubumana'n o Ubupona quiere decir tierra sin mal, algunos literalmente lo traducen, pero es la tierra que esté libre de contaminación, la tierra fértil, la tierra linda, pero también quiere decir para que tengamos Ubumana'n es necesario conservar toda la biodiversidad. Por ejemplo, hoy en día para alcanzar ese desafío ya es muy difícil porque el entorno está todo contaminado, no es solamente el suelo en sí, sino que todo lo que es los árboles, los ríos, todo lo que en ella hay para que se mantenga así el suelo limpio de toda contaminación. Eso sería Ubumana'n. El gran desafío del pueblo Mbga guaraní para el cuidado del suelo, de nuestro planeta Tierra, nuestro Ubumana'n, es cada vez más difícil, cada vez más grande, porque estamos acorralados por grandes empresas, por grandes monocultivos como pino, eucaliptus, también plantaciones de tabaco en algunas zonas. Entonces se usa muchos venenos para combatir distintas plagas para esas plantaciones, por lo tanto van contaminando con mucha velocidad lo que es nuestro suelo, ¿no? El pueblo Mbga necesita grandes extensiones de monte, de territorio, no para explotarla, sino para convivir con ella armoniosamente, para sacar lo que necesitan, remedios, tanto frutas como nuestra materia prima para hacer nuestras artesanías y para plantar lo que es solamente para consumo propio, ¿no? Y entonces es necesario para la vida humana, no solamente para el pueblo Mbuya. Y eso obviamente de a poco afecta a la salud de la gente, no solamente la salud física, sino mental, espiritualmente, porque muchas cosas que sacamos del monte para la ceremonia ya no se puede encontrar. Hay muchas comunidades que están muy cerca de las grandes ciudades urbanas, en donde cada vez está más pequeño el territorio indígena, por lo tanto es imposible ya vivir como hace unos años atrás. Así que es un desafío enorme, ¿no? Y eso depende de nuestros derechos de la propiedad comunitaria, que hasta ahora no se ha logrado en Argentina, ¿no? Yo pertenezco a la Teña Chino, que es una organización tradicional de forma horizontal, que quiere decir Asamblea Permanente del Pueblo Mbuya, hace aproximadamente 20 años, que surgió justamente desde la lucha por los territorios, ¿no? Que es una preocupación enorme de unas comunidades que estaban luchando en soledad contra las madereras, que estaban talando los árboles nativos. Por lo tanto, si los Mbuya no luchaban, era casi imposible frenar esas talas de árboles, ¿no? Para hablar sobre el cuidado del suelo, no se podría hablar de forma separada. Yo creo que si los pueblos indígenas protegen o luchan por los territorios, indirectamente es una forma de cuidar el suelo, ¿no? Porque los pueblos indígenas no usan de la misma manera que las grandes empresas, no usan veneno, no usan químico, no talan árboles para plantar monocultivo, por lo tanto no daña al suelo de la misma forma que dañan otras personas que no son pertenecientes al pueblo indígena. Por lo tanto, los pueblos indígenas, al conservar su territorio y hacer el uso sustentable de la misma, lo están haciendo indirectamente ya para cuidar el suelo. Todos los pueblos indígenas podamos vivir tranquilos en nuestro territorio y sin ser violentadas y avasalladas por grandes empresas que solo buscan un fin económico y no para vivir de una manera armoniosa como lo vivimos los pueblos indígenas, con respeto hacia la madre tierra, ¿no? Y también esto es posible solamente haciendo cumplir las leyes y tratados internacionales que ya están escritos gracias a la lucha de los pueblos indígenas. No hay que inventar nada, y el gran desafío es eso, que los territorios sean devueltas para sus verdaderos dueños, o lo que nosotros sabemos cómo respetarla y cuidarla como se merece. Llegamos a este desequilibrio y a este cambio climático que llaman muchos científicos, es al descuido y a la manera de que el humano, el ser humano, la mayoría de los seres humanos vienen tratando a la madre tierra, ¿no? El mensaje que quiero dejar a las personas que están viendo este video es que apoyen cuando se escuchen, cuando vean en las noticias que los pueblos indígenas en distintos lugares del mundo están luchando por sus territorios, que apoyen esa causa, que no es solo para ellos que tienen sus casas, tienen su alimento, tienen su farmacia, tienen su cementerio, tienen todo lo que necesitan ellas, sino que es para el mundo entero, para toda la humanidad, no es solo para los pueblos indígenas. Eso tenemos que tomar conciencia de eso, de que cuidar nuestra madre naturaleza no es solo para la gente que vivimos más en armonía, más en sintonía con el entorno, sino también para la gente que vive en grandes ciudades, porque es para las futuras generaciones. El planeta Tierra, la Tierra, la Pachamama, o en diferentes nombre en distintos idiomas indígenas, no es algo infinito, es algo que se termina, es algo que se degrada, es algo que se enferma si nosotros no respetamos y no tomamos los debidos recaudos cuando nosotros queremos sacar provecho de la naturaleza. Eso tenemos que tomar conciencia de que no es solo por nosotros los pueblos indígenas, es por la humanidad toda.
Thank you, Jachuka, and what a privilege to be able to hear the story directly from you and to hear your wish for the earth. And now I'd like to introduce our second last speaker. Her name is Christina Ella. She's the founder and co-director of Trayos Baye Winyan Maka, which translates to Extended Family of Women of the Earth. It is a nonprofit that for over 15 years has dedicated itself to its mission to advocate, promote, and support alternative housing and energy, nutritional and educational sovereignty. Very important mission in today's world. And yeah, let's hear from Christina herself.
My name is Lakota the Ta'anta Tawash de Otawe, now her many good days. And I received that name during a healing ceremony, which meant that I would, translates to, I'm going to live a long time. So I love the name. But my other name is Christina Ella, and that has a Lakota translation, which means spirit lives, now she cries. The name of my organization is Tioshbe Wiyamaka. Tioshbe, and that's a Lakota phrase. Tioshbe is extended family. Wia is woman, Maka is earth. And so Tioshbe Wiyamaka translates to the extended family of women of the earth. We're an indigenous run, woman run, nonprofit here in Colorado. We wanted to go beyond helping people that were perpetually in crisis and do something that might help them feel stronger and more confident. So they needed a good home, they needed alternative heat source, they needed to be able to grow their own food, they needed a child care center. And in a community, I visualized a child care center being right next door to the elder center, because when elders and children come together, that's when magic happens. We've had many, many people that have died of cancer, and especially the Lakotas who went to work at the mines in order to be able to feed their families, because there is no like employment on the reservations as you would think of employment, and that just could spin me off into how things got to be the way they are, but I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. On the reservations, the Lakota reservations, we have a lot of things that are affecting the soil. And I would say one of the main ones that I can think of is uranium, because there was a lot of uranium mining that was going on around the Edgemont area and even further west, but it spread out a bit because of the trucks that would go in and out. And they left the uranium tailings there, and so our water became contaminated with uranium. And I can imagine, what it did to the air eventually. So we're talking about 3 of the major elements that are affected by the things that they do. And so uranium is the main one, and then there's oh dear. Well, I think that's the main one. I was invited to go to Florida, and I had never been to Florida, and I wanted to see Florida, so I went, and I was asked to go there for storytelling, and I said, well, okay, but what should I talk about? And they said things, that would really be kind of foreign to Indigenous people's ears. We want you to talk about living systems and regeneration. And I said, oh, okay. Well, is it okay if I tie it into my story about what's it? Oh, The Beginning Times. The Beginning Times is one of my favorite stories to tell because it talks about the beginning times when the Creator came and said, "This planet is for all of you. Look what the gift I've given you. Look what she does for you. She supplies your food. You know, she feeds the animals. She feeds all of us. She gives us everything that we need. And when we get sick and you know, from whatever, she doctors us. And oh goodness, you know." And I said, so when you talk about regeneration and living systems, you have to understand that the colonizers are the ones who are destroying those very things. We never had to worry about regeneration. We never had to worry about living systems because they were here long before even the animals were here. The earth is the earth, and she regenerates in herself in order to take care of us. You know, her living systems, she knows quite well. And it makes me sad today when I think about all these scientific things that they have, you know. Oh, we have to regenerate. And then they use all these big scientific terms when all they have to do is say, leave her alone. You know, she's perfectly capable of doing those things on her own. But it's when, you know, you introduce a lot of other things that hurt the soil really bad. And then you think you have all these things to fix her, to repair her. But the fact of the matter is, you know, before you can fix the damage that has been done to her through corporate greed and corporate farming and those kinds of things, first you have to decolonize your mind and really understand what is happening. You know, why did they do that? Then you understand it's corporate greed. There's big farming corporations. And so they've done a lot of damage, you know. It's like they raped the soil by digging into her, you know, and throwing things out and injecting things into her that weren't meant to be there. That's what we call raping the Earth Mother, you know. And so, you know, you have to start repairing it. First, we have to decolonize our minds and those that we're with. Because, you know, I think people who love the Earth, you know, we seem to find each other. It's kind of like magnets, you know. It's just like, boom, you know, pretty soon we're a big voice, and we come together and we talk about decolonizing. And so we have to start with decolonizing our hearts and our minds, and then we have to start working on decolonizing the Earth Mother, you know, because look at these. Isn't this beautiful? These cottonwoods. Oh my God. It's so sacred. And I know that any of the indigenous people that are listening were here, they would feel the energy. The cottonwood is very, very sacred to the Lakota. It's what, you know, it's our Sundance tree. It's our tree of life. And all indigenous cultures, you know, the black, the red, the yellow, the white, we all have what represents the tree of life to us. It's the most precious tree to us. And so for the Lakota, it's the cottonwood. And that's why when I came here that day, I felt such power, such energy. I could almost hear them talking, you know. And so this is where I want to start, you know, the encampment. And this is what we have to save. Now see, do you see what they did? Cut everything down. Now they left openings here. Maybe the roots are going to get what they left, but I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know. But yeah, so we have to decolonize the soil, and then we have to build up things. And you know, what's over here is good, and maybe the roots are going to get that. It's refeeding the soil. She knows how to regenerate herself. You know, she knows about the living systems all around here. And so these are the things that we're taught as little kids, you know. And keep yourself close to the earth. Go barefoot. We didn't wear shoes. We would get incensed and insulted if somebody said, put shoes on your feet. We'd say, what? We were barefoot all summer long. And even in the rainy season, there's nothing more exciting for a young person then to get their toes all squished up in the mud, and it's really fun.
So that brings us almost to the end of day 2 of this conference. And it's so difficult to summarize briefly all of the lessons and the insights and the wisdom that has been brought here today and offered to the world to impact on our soils in a positive way and to restore harmony and bring ourselves into right relationship with the earth. And so, as an offering to bring this all together, I recently came across a diagram that explained the 4 R's of deep adaptation. And it's my personal belief that we are in a process at the moment as human beings that requires us to adapt quite quickly and very deeply to a very rapidly changing climate, both socially, economically, environmentally, and spiritually. And these 4 R's, I feel, have been touched on by all of our speakers today in what they have shared with us. The first one being restoration and regeneration. So what is it and how can we regenerate and restore our natural ecosystems and our relationships with others? Which brings us to the second R, which is the R for reconciliation. Not just reconciling in our human realms, but also reconciling with nature, reconciling with the microbes of the microorganisms, reconciling with the spirits of the land, asking permission before taking. All of these practices that seem to have fallen away in our capitalist, consumption-based societal practices. The next R is relinquish. What can we let go of? What do we no longer need? The question we ask in permaculture trainings is it greed or is it need? And I think it's really time that we ask those questions again. What can I relinquish? What can I stop doing? What practices are not serving me? What habits are no longer helping? Can we relinquish fertilizers? Can we relinquish pesticides? Can we relinquish some of the harvest and let the birds take it? Big questions, very important. And the last one is the R for resilience. And that's something that I've seen in every single one of our speakers here today, that ability to bounce back, that willingness to learn from our mistakes, the humility to say, I don't know, but I'm going to try again. We will have steps back. There will be challenges and there will be difficulties. And possibly there may be more and more of those as the world changes around us. But this ability to bounce back stronger than before, for me, comes with the opportunity to work together. So for resilience to take place, we need to join hands. And I really believe we are stronger together. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And to close this conference and to give you a little taster of what's to come tomorrow, I'd like to introduce Jefferson from Zimbabwe. He will be reading us a poem which he wrote that is called Dear Mother Nature. Jefferson Mwaruta is a young land guardian from Zimbabwe, and he's part of the CCIVS network. We're very happy to have him here and hope that his poem inspires others. So join us tomorrow, where you'll hear from more young activists and more volunteers for soil, as well as members from the International Voluntary Service, where they will share why it's so important for IVS and all volunteers and organizations in the world to start taking action on behalf of soil. Join us tomorrow. Thank you for joining today. Over to Jefferson.
O Mother Nature, for how long shall you groan? The very life you support is the very life you should dread. The very mouths you feed are the ones that make your hand. O dear earth, how much more can you take? You choke on the smoke we produce, yet the industries don't even care. You die because of the trees we chop. For how long shall we go on though? I hear tales of back then, how you used to be, when the forests were thickets full of life you see. Now they're just shells of what they used to be. If really this is the future, then where are we going? This wasteland we're creating, is it our intention? How I long for the Garden of Eden once more. How I wish to see you flourish like it was before. I'm Jefferson Marudu, and that was Dear Mother Nature, representing Zimbabwe Welcomes Association. Thank you.